So here we are with Cyrus Mojdehi of Northway Homes and Wicked & Partners, riding around South End and Charlotte, looking at some home sites and talking about Cyrus's home building and lending business. So Cyrus, thanks for riding around with us today and talking with us.
This is great. Thanks so much for having me.
We got to give a shout out to Jordan Washburn for allowing us to roll around in the Sprinter van, so we're riding around in style today.
Yeah, we want to keep it all night, so.
That's right, that's right. Maybe go on the town in the Sprinter later.
Yeah, Tiber.
That's right. Before we get into talking again about Northway and Wicked, I want to talk about your experience at Brown as a collegiate athlete playing water polo. Where I grew up, we didn't have water polo. We had hoops and football. So I don't know much about water polo, but I was doing some research and I was reading that some scientists said that of all the Olympic sports, water polo is the most physically and mentally demanding sport there is. So why is that, and what do you apply to your business today that you learned from that experience?
Yeah, it's a tough sport because you're treading water the whole time. It's extremely physical. Most of the game happens underneath the surface, and you're just trying to get away with as much as you can before the ref kind of finds out what you're doing.
Is there some sucker punching going on under the water?
A lot of
okay.
it. Yeah.
So it's kind of like wrestling. It's kind of like wrestling.
It's wrestling. Yeah, it's wrestling in the water. Really is what it is,
yeah.
And sprinting back and forth, and that's why it's so exhausting. But really, the big things I gained out of being a collegiate athlete, playing that sport at the highest level outside of the Olympics here is the discipline and the work ethic. Nobody wants to wake up at 5:30 to go to one of multiple practices of the day, right? Nobody wants to do that, but you just force yourself to, and it becomes part of your routine. And if you can do difficult things with your body, you can do anything with your mind. Those are the key, tenets that I took away from playing the sport in college.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things I really admire about your business is the team aspect that you bring to your business. You've got a really loyal group of people that you work with, and it's a very collaborative environment. And I think college sports teaches you that as well, or any sports.
Yeah, and we have, my partner Danny played college tennis. We have a couple other college athletes on our team, and we all have, a team first mentality. It's not an individual business at all, and we really rely on each other. We bring you in and you can kind of see that culture, and it's contagious. It's not even about being smarter than anybody else. It's not about, having more relationships than anybody else. It's simply about putting in that extra time, that extra energy, that extra effort that has allowed us to be successful in the market.
Yeah, so let's talk about that success. You've got Northway Homes, you have Wicked & Partners. When I look at your business, the three verticals that I see, correct me if I'm wrong, you have your acquisitions of existing multifamily, value add acquisitions. You have your home building business, your new construction business, which we work on together with looking for land opportunities. And then you have your lending business, which I need to learn more about, right? Or maybe invest in. Tell me about those verticals and the way your companies are set up since founding several years ago.
Yeah, really, they're all housing focused, so they're all symbiotic businesses. Northway Homes is a developer that is focused on building rental housing, primarily to sell to institutional investors that have raised, hundreds of millions of dollars for this space. And we focus on path of growth locations in Charlotte. Why Charlotte is really an interesting story too. Just there's so many path of growth locations. I mean, not so much anymore, but when we started Northway, we found that we could go and buy a whole, assemble some acreage of land and all of a sudden make that area desirable because we just rebuilt it. Whereas, other groups would overlook the area and say, it's too rough, but we could assemble sites and totally rebrand and rechange, a blighted neighborhood, an overlooked neighborhood, places where, were really underappreciated. Mm-hmm. That's really our focus, is value-oriented rental housing.
And what about the lending side of the business?
So the lending side, it really came to be because we're a borrower from so many different sources, from banks, from debt funds, from private lenders. And we saw, a lot of opportunity in the market to create a product for the home builders and the sponsors that are doing flips, that are doing 2 to 20 deals a year, that post-financial crisis, banks don't have a place on their balance sheet for these groups. So because we are a developer, we can offer a differentiated lending product. We know borrower pain points because we've borrowed from so many different people and are executing the same plan on a daily basis. And it allows us to, be a great counterparty for other developers in the market.
That's a huge differentiator, to be able to know how developers think, to know what developers are going through, the challenges, municipalities, zoning, permitting.
We offer a bespoke solution, and we start backwards in our lending business. We say, what's the need we're solving for? Traditionally lenders say, I can only lend around, this box. For us, we do the opposite. We take the opposite approach and say, all right, where does the borrower want to end up? And let's structure around that and figure out what the best solution is.
Let's get back to talking about Northway Homes for a second. When you go out, whether you build one lot, one house, you get it permitted, you build the house, or a subdivision, you've got 20 homes, you're ready to sell it. Who's your buyer? Who are you targeting?
So we're targeting institutional investors in the space that over the past 2 to 3 years have raised, substantial amounts of capital from European investors, Asian investors, and domestic investors. The single family build for rent asset class has become the most coveted asset class in commercial real estate today. Several years ago, it was thought of to be too tough to manage. It was thought of as, a mom and pop business. But now there's more capital flowing into single family funds than almost any other asset class. The reason we target those groups is because it's more of a transactional deal. You don't have the retail home buyer emotional attachment to the home, issues that arise with that. For us, it's purely about the economics with these groups.
Yeah, and I think like you mentioned, the term I use is dry powder. There's a lot of dry powder out there and a lot of appetite, and that's why it's the most coveted asset class in commercial real estate.
And you can't compete with the bond market if you're a retail buyer. So these groups are borrowing from the bond market in today's capital markets environment at 2%, right? So you can just pay so much more than a consumer that's, has a 30-year mortgage in the mid threes, And by the way, these groups can still get to an attractive return, borrowing at 2, buying a upper 4 cap. In a market that's appreciating, that's an attractive enough yield to make sense.
And there's major rent growth opportunity in a market like Charlotte. All right, so most people know, Cyrus, that I'm a South End guy. You like to frequent spots in South End as well. You're definitely a foodie. I know you love great restaurants, local curated restaurants. Give us some of your top South End restaurant joints, or maybe Charlotte joints in general, but also some of your South End spots.
Yeah, I definitely love to eat. I think recently it's been Vana. They had a great Wagyu special on the menu this week. It was amazing. Big meat guy, so I love to go there. I'm also like Oku. I think, I'm from San Diego, so love to get sushi and fish as much as possible. Definitely Kindred. That's one that's overlooked in Davidson.
You're also a big red wine guy coming from the West Coast, so give us a couple wine recommendations.
Yeah, I think, I love Willamette Valley Pinots. So Domaine Roy is one of my favorites. Dusky Goose. I like the lighter wines. I know you're a big room cab guy with the Camus. It's nice to mix it up and feel a little lighter,
Yeah, and what are your thoughts on room temp versus chilled wine?
Chilled wine, 100%.
What degree?
58.
Temperature? 58.
Yeah.
Okay. I've got the wine fridge now, and Cyrus is responsible for that, but I'm keeping them at 55 degrees. Yeah, that's good stuff, Cyrus. So something else that we joke about a lot, other people say this, but I think you and I joke about this more than anyone, is that I like to talk with my hands, and there's a specific emoji we use of the hands. And so before we get out of here, give me the hands one time. I'm Jay Royster.
I'm Cyrus.
And thanks for tuning in to Royster's View.